Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Patient Convert podcast. Justin not here, and I have a special guest, Dr. Andrew Wilner, that is joining me today out of Knoxville, actually. And Dr. Wilner, why don't you introduce yourself? And I'm really excited about the topic we're talking about today, which is locums and finding work-life balance and using locums to do that, which you've actually written a book on. So introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about kind of your book and this passion project.
Well, you mentioned the book, Justin, and it just so happens I have a copy.
Excellent.
And I started working locums. My first locums job was 1982. Wow. And since then, I've worked off and on, and I'm a writer. So it was my fourth book. I was looking for something to write a book about. And it's like, when you're an author, you want to write. It's like, well, what do I know about? And then I realized, I've had a lot of locums experiences. And it was more and more in the news, locums, more doctors doing locums. It's a huge growth area. So I wrote this nonfiction guidebook, and I get a lot of feedback. I think we'll talk, but I think it's something very important for physicians to know about. Some people say, oh, Dr. Wilner, you're recommending locums. Well, not necessarily, but I think it's something that physicians should know is an option. My current day job is associate professor of neurology at the University of Tennessee, and I see patients, I teach residents and medical students. I actually have a pretty busy day in clinical medicine. We write a paper now and then, but I'm basically a clinician. I'm also board certified in internal medicine, and I did a fellowship in epilepsy, and I read a lot of EEGs. But today is a day off, so I have the pleasure of speaking with you.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about the book, this passion project. It's been a life journey. I mean, starting in the 80s with your first locums, why you think it is so important to look at as an option, especially when you hear all of the time. I mean, you have people just having podcasts specifically about physician burnout, work-life balance, getting fulfillment, and you have like really high, unfortunate suicide rates in medicine right now. Why are you so passionate about this, and how can you find that work-life balance inside of locums?
Right. So when I was a resident in internal medicine, there was no such thing as work-life balance, right? I mean, if you said to your superior, I need to, leave early today then you were fired, or you failed. That was kind of a guarantee to do badly. It was not an option. But my interest in work-life balance really had to do with a passion for writing. I mean, ever since I was 12 or 13 years old, I felt that somehow I was a writer, and I've always strived to write nonfiction, poetry, fiction. I wrote a novel that's unpublished. I've written hundreds, if not thousands by now, medical news articles for Medscape and other journals. Yeah. So this is something I wanted to do. And back in 1982, I did my internship. I didn't have time to do the laundry, never mind write a book. And I had a book in my head, and it was bothering me. So I kind of made a deal with myself. Okay, you're going to put 100% of your energy into your internship so you don't flunk out. That's pretty intimidating. And then let's see if you can take, quote, a year off and then write your book. So that was my first locums experience. I worked part-time, right, for a doctor. That's 36 hours a week, 3 12-hour shifts in an ER. So I had 4 days to myself to write the book, and that's what I did. Wow. And so that's when I realized that Locum Tenens can be a work-life balance solution. So fast forward, 40 years later, all of a sudden work-life balance is much more. First of all, there's more women in the workplace, and women have a lot more juggling to do by the nature of our society. They tend to be the ones more involved with childcare, more involved with taking care of the house. Not saying it's right, but that's kind of the way most people live. And work-life balance is a much higher priority, I think, for women. And now that women are more than 50% of the medical students, this has really become an important topic. And the other thing that's happened for a lot of reasons, and you could probably devote 10 podcasts, is why has the practice of medicine resulted in so much burnout, right?
Mm.
And let's just accept that as a given, because it is. And locums can be a way out. I'm personally very dismayed. I have a good friend, John Jerica, who's an expert in non-clinical careers for physicians, which is one way out. And I've worked with John many times and participated with him in seminar, and I've been on his podcast. And I think what he's doing is wonderful. But I'm saddened that physicians who trained for so many years, who went into medicine, with their heart in it, all of a sudden, are going to become coders or working for an insurance company. I mean, that just seems terrible. So my recommendation is look at locums first, which is a way to become a private contractor, self-employed, continue the clinical practice of medicine, and pursue other interests, whether that's your family or a serious hobby or a combination. For me, for example, I worked locums for 10 years and did medical mission work in Southeast Asia. I did scuba diving in Southeast Asia. I wrote hundreds of articles there, and I commuted back and forth. I did the locums in the US, and then I would go to Southeast Asia and stay there until I ran out of money. And then I would come back and do locums again. And it worked very well for me. I was able to maintain my identity as a physician and clinician, which was very important to me. I had worked earlier as a medical journalist full-time, but I was no longer a clinician, and that bothered me. So I went, locums was a way to go back into clinical medicine, but without the giant infrastructure that you have when you're an employed physician. And since 2016, more than 50% of physicians are now employed, which I think is sort of a watermark in the whole physician landscape. So if you're going to be employed, why not be self-employed and have the flexibility and freedom to work, where you want, when you want, how much you want, and really earn as much as you want, depending on how much you want to work. So it's a much more flexible scenario.
Wow, that sounds fantastic. And then, like you said, it opens the doors for whatever fills your cup, whether it's physician entrepreneurship or something else. Talk to me about, as you mentioned before, getting that first assignment. So if there's a physician out there listening to this, maybe get your book. I know you talked to it in there, but give us a little taste of, if you're looking to make that transition, take some of your time back and kind of become a contractor so you can pursue other things. How do you get started in locums to land that first job?
Yeah, great question. I would say, first of all, figure out why exactly you want to work locums. Do you need extra money and you're going to keep your job? And you can do that, right? You can work locums on top of your regular job. Are you done with your job and you want a part-time job that you can control? Do you want to travel? Is it your concept, to see, the 50 states, go to Anchorage, go to Hawaii? I mean, there are Guam. I mean, there are locum jobs everywhere. I looked at a neurology job in Guam, but my wife wouldn't let me go. So there's a lot of opportunities. So once you decide that, it's going to help you with your question with, well, how do you get the job? In my case, when I worked in the ER way back when, it was because I had heard the residents were moonlighting at this particular ER, which was near where I did my internship. And it was a very tiny ER. It was kind of manageable. And so I just went and applied. So it was word of mouth. And since then, I've worked at the Mayo Clinic as a locums via word of mouth. One of my buddies was the chairman of neurology at the Mayo Clinic, and they needed some extra help. And so I just was able to sort of do it. It was a one-on-one and fill out other forms. Now, the easier way to do it, and so I would recommend keep your ear to the ground in whatever community you're in. Now, keep in mind, you may have a restrictive covenant that says you can't work within X number of miles from, so keep that in mind. But, somebody may be on maternity leave. Somebody else, the clinic's growing. They just opened up a whole new wing and they need somebody. They've recruited someone's hired. They're going to take that job, but they're not available for a year. because of all the paperwork and licensing. But in the meantime, the hospital or the clinic wants to get going. So they can, and you're already there. So you've already got a license. All you got to do is hospital credentialing and you're good to go. So keep your ear to the ground, let people know that this is what you're interested in. And then, of course, there are the staffing agencies. And in my book, there's a list of them. There's more since I wrote the book, because they are basically a middleman. They know who has needs, and they'll set you up. And the staffing agencies really provide, I would say, a terrific service, because they hook you up, they pay you, they pay your transportation, they pay for your credentialing, they pay for your licensing, and they take responsibility. They separate you from the employer. So if there's an issue with the employer, then your issue is with the locums company, who then deals with the employer. So they create space. But of course, they take a cut. Now, that may mean you earn less, but it may not. For example, in one case, I was working with an agency, and I said, I worked for this hospital 2 years ago, and they're offering me the same salary as 2 years ago. I want more. So the agency went to the hospital and asked for more, and they got it. So even though I was paying the agency, I probably wouldn't have had the expertise or the will, to actually sort of negotiate with the hospital. So I let them do it. So I think I came out ahead, even though I had an agency. So it's not all that straightforward. The agencies you want to pick, there's an organization, and I've interviewed them. This is my website there, my podcast, The Art of Medicine with Dr. Andrew Wilner. And I've interviewed NALTO, the National Association of Locum Tenens Organizations. So that's the organization that staffing agencies join when they want to show that they're responsible and they're going to follow all the rules, because there are horror stories. It doesn't take much. It's like a real estate agent. Pass your license and you're an agent. Staffing agent, all you have to do is say, I'm a staffing agent, right? And you're a staffing agent. There's really, it just makes, so there's a low threshold for entry, but there are, well-regarded firms that have been in the business for a long time. I'll mention Comp Health, for example. I've worked with them. Staff Care, I've worked with them. And then there are many, many others that are very good. And some are also niche. In other words, say you're general surgeon, there are locums that help general surgeons, something like that. So you can hunt around for if there's a niche agency that's going to help you. But as soon as you contact them, you'll get lots of emails and phone calls. They could be a nuisance because they make money when you make money. So if you're not making money contracted with them, they're just spinning their wheels. So they want you to work. But, that's a good marriage. You want to work too. That's why you contacted them in the first place. So I would say don't contact half a dozen. Find one or two. And the other key is, well, how good is the agency? I used real estate agent as a analogy, and I've used that in my book also. I think the specific agent is much more important than the agency. You can go with Sanctuary 21 or, realtors.com. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that agent that you're dealing with, that they understand you, that they're responsible, they're responsive. So talk to that person on the phone. And if you're not comfortable with them, find somebody else until somebody you can communicate with, whom you're convinced has your best interests at heart. In other words, isn't just going to send you to Anchorage, Alaska because they're desperate for somebody and the agent is desperate for a paycheck, unless it's a good scenario and you really want to go there. You get there, you find out you're the only doctor within, 500 miles and you're on call 24/7 and there's no support services and it's really cold. So, you want to be prepared, and the agent can help you with that.
Some really good points. And that was, you kind of hit on it a little bit. Is there anything, now being in this for 40 years, and I'm sure you probably talk about it in depth in your book too, is there anything they should be aware of, especially when they're going into their first couple assignments, in terms of contract negotiation, those types of things that are really good kind of notes, maybe hard lessons or good lessons that you've learned over the years? Like you kind of mentioned, even having the staffing company do some of that negotiation for you.
Yeah, there's a few things. There's not a lot. The contract, you'll sign like a 6-page contract. And then for each assignment, it's like 1 page. Basically, when are you going to show
Pretty
up?
simple.
How much are you going to get paid? And how do you get out of it if it's a disaster? You give notice. Usually it's 30 days. So find out also, it's kind of an industry standard. When you get a contract, either party, you or the employer, a hospital or clinic, can terminate that contract up to 30 days before it starts. So it was August. I had a contract to start, September 1. And exactly 30 days before my contract was supposed to start, I got an email from the staffing agency that the employer no longer needs you. Thank you very much. And that's it. It doesn't have to be substantiated by any valid reason. It's just, we don't need you anymore. They've changed their goals, blah, 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 some bureaucratic explanation, or they found somebody else. And you're without, this was a 6-month assignment that was supposed to start, and I'd already spent that money, right? So, there you are. So always have a backup plan. Call another agent the next day and say, hey, turns out I'm free, from October on. Have 6 months of money in the bank. That's important because there is this possibility. Now, the other side of the coin is that if something better comes up, you can cancel also up to 30 days and say, I don't really want to do that. I changed my mind. That's all there is to it. So there's a built-in instability. Malpractice should be provided. So make sure there's a 1-page malpractice sheet. Make sure you ask for that and take a look at it. Make sure it looks legit. You don't have to pay for that. There's no legit staffing agency that I know that doesn't pay for malpractice. So that's should be taken care of. You may have to ask about housing. It's like, it depends usually on how long you're going to stay. If it's 2 weeks, they're going to put you in a hotel. 2 months, they'll put you in a hotel. If it's 8 months, they might give you an apartment or upgrade your hotel. You have to ask. You say, it's, can you provide something better? Will they provide a car? Do you need a car? In one assignment, I worked across the street from the hospital. They actually provided a car. I only drove it from the airport to the hotel and back to the airport. I never actually used a car. So identify which benefits are included. So none of this is a surprise. The 24-hour number, if things go bad, what do you do? There are horror stories. I think the other thing is to be prepared that whatever situation you're going to, they need someone desperately, which is why they're hiring you. It means they can't hire a full-time person because they're in North Dakota, or nobody wants to go there, or there's a toxic work environment, or they did hire somebody who can't start, for another year. And I've been in that scenario. But be prepared for a lousy work experience. That's why you're going. But good news is it's temporary. They're going to pay you either way, right? You're paid by time, not by patient. So productivity, you can forget about RVUs. It's not an issue. You're not going to be on any committees. You're just going to show up, see patients, write your notes, and go home. That's all you're expected to do. And frankly, from my point of view, that's all you should do.
Another good point.
In other words, don't offer any suggestions on how things could be better. And if you do a good job and you're pleasant, it's happened to me and it's happened to other locums, they'll ask you to stay. They'll say, Dr. Wilner, we've been recruiting for somebody for a long time, but you're doing such a great job. Would you like to stay? So the caveat there is if you were placed there by, say, CompHealth. CompHealth has a contract with that hospital that if you go full-time with that hospital, in other words, leaving CompHealth in the dust, CompHealth will get a cut of your salary.
Normal headhunter staffing agency.
And it's not unreasonable. And usually that's about 2 years. And that actually happened to me, where I got a private call direct from a hospital where I'd worked before. And it was within 2 years where I had worked under a agency. So I called the agency and I said, I think you guys should be in the loop here, because I didn't want to do any, get in trouble late down the road.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, the hospital had to go through them. But I don't care. My job is to, do my clinical work, write my notes, and then follow my outside passions. And, they can deal with all the administrative stuff.
So to switch gears a little bit, because I always like to bring it back around to marketing, and what you just mentioned is the passion project side of things. One thing in particular I wanted to talk about, which we've hit on over the last 2 or 3 years on the podcast, is kind of the personal branding. So now that you can focus on these passion projects, and you obviously are, you've got the Art of Medicine, your podcast, which is in the background behind you. You got your website. You've written multiple books, including the one we're talking about today. I wanted to kind of talk about the personal brand building process. And if you are a physician, say you go the locums route, or you're just looking to kind of start building your legacy, start providing a conduit to reach patients or colleagues or whatever it is that is your passion project, there's marketing involved in terms of creating your website, building your brand. So I'd love to kind of hear what your journeys looked like. Maybe some bumps in the road as you've gotten your podcast underway or your website, because I just think it's really important. It's such a hot topic now. If I'm a physician and I'm here and I'm looking to get online, create content for whatever it is that I want to talk about, how do I get started, and what are some of the things that I may run into along the way?
Yeah, you're right. It's a really big topic. And I see all these articles, for physicians. Oh, you need to be online, you need to get out there. I think I would offer a lot of caution, because like this video, after you edit out all the parts that aren't optimal, right, it's going to go and sit on YouTube for the rest of my life. So anything you do on social media, whether it's LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook, is permanent. When I was years ago, I saw a news article where there was an ER near me. This is back in Rhode Island. And there was a very dedicated physician. She was an ER doc, and she used to post on Facebook interesting things that happened. And one day there was a severe car crash, and she treated, and there were some miraculous survivals. And she posted, she was very careful not to put anybody's name or identify anyone. She's well aware of, HIPAA, the rule that says you can't disclose patient information. Somebody somewhere, it was a small town, said that because it was a small town, people were able to identify who the victims were in the crash, because it was only one big crash, at that town, that week, which I guess hadn't really dawned on her. Well, as soon as she became aware that this was an issue, she took down the post and then promptly got fired from her job by the hospital for divulging patient information, and censored by the medical society, the licensing bureau. I was appalled. I mean, this woman did everything in good faith. She thought these stories were kind of cool, that people should know about them. She took it down right away. She didn't have a malicious bone in her body. She lost her job, got censored, finally got another job in the state, almost ruined her life just because she was communicating things that she thought were of kind of public interest on Facebook. So I think for many physicians, the internet and social media has the potential to harm, which is far, far greater than the potential to help. So I've only recently become very intentional about what I do on the internet. The Art of Medicine, grew out of my Locums book. When I did the book, I thought, well, how can I let people know there's a book out there? So I thought, well, I'll put up a video, a 5-minute summary of each chapter. So I did chapter 1. I talked to myself for 5 minutes and posted the video, chapter 2. So there are 20 chapters up there that I put up that are free, for people who are interested and are going to search Locum Tenens. Well, then I ran out of chapters. So I thought, well, I'll interview some Locum Tenens, physicians. And in my book, in fact, I interviewed 16 physicians and put their experience. So it's not just about my experiences, I expanded it. So I interviewed some locum tenens physicians. And I thought, it'd be interesting to interview an accountant who deals with locum tenens physicians. And so I found one. And then I said, I've talked a lot about locums and it's great, but I want to expand. So it became the art of medicine. And now I talk to physicians who've written books, clergy who treat, dying patients in the hospital. I talk to a woman who's deaf, who teaches deaf children. And there's a lot of issues there about whether they should use, a device to be part of the hearing world or part of the deaf community. I've learned that there's a lot of very interesting people out there who write books or who are doing charity work, that are not on the front page of the New York Times.
Mm-hmm.
So it's my mission to kind of highlight their work. And it's been a lot of fun, almost 100 episodes now. I've been doing it for 3.5 years. It's every 2 weeks. Now, in terms of branding, one of the things I do is I do it all myself. I choose the guests, I record the interview, I transcribe the interview, I edit the interview, and I post it when I want to post it, where I want to post it, and I filter the comments. So I control it. And, that may be a psychiatric comment on my personality, but it also is a way of maintaining my brand, because my brand is, I like to think, is that of a quality clinician and a physician who's out there to help. And so that's my brand. So I try and control my brand. I share it on Twitter and LinkedIn, but I don't do much of random posting, and I don't get into much back and forth with people. If someone contact me, and I'll mention my website, andrewwilner.com, that's kind of the funnel. And there you can leave me a message or contact me and I'll respond, one-on-one. But I think social media is really a pitfall for physicians, because physicians they're judged at a higher standard, whether they should be or not. They are, by everyone. So I think if you're going to get into marketing, well, you might want someone to help you who's a specialist in that, who can create a little distance, who, if you say, I want to put my little kid on the cover of our brochure, on his skateboard, because I want to highlight, elbow injuries or something. You might say, well, I don't know. Let's talk about that, and see how it's perceived. And I think it's great if you're going to do that kind of thing, that you have professional guidance, because the pitfalls are really huge.
That's a really good point. What about the time it takes, especially you doing it all on your own? You have an extremely busy schedule. What have you found that works well for you? Like you said, kind of today's off. Are you time blocking? How do you make sure that this stuff, some of your passion project stuff, gets done intentionally?
Right. So, that's always a work in progress. I try and prioritize, and I try and be very efficient. I read those things, 10 ways to make your office, more efficient. Look at your mail once, I do all of it. I was very disappointed when I read that article, because I can be more efficient. I was already doing like all of those things. And I would say the main thing is I try and do everything once. I don't, when I do an interview, I do it once. I don't do a pre-interview. It's like 2 minutes, just like we did today. Okay, Dr. Willis, we're going to talk about. It's like, okay, any questions? All right, let's roll. Boom. I record it the same day if I can. I review it. I make any edits and I post it, and it's done. So I try and be very, very efficient with the things that I do. I'm always looking for new and interesting things to do, and that probably wastes a lot of time, because most of the leads you follow go nowhere. But you have to prioritize. I've prioritized. I mean, my podcast has come out every 2 weeks without interruption for 3.5 years. I think that's part of my branding.
Yeah, that's really big. Most people fail at that. And that's when they fail at building a podcast.
Right. So that if you're a listener, and for all your listeners out there, thank you very much for listening to the podcast or watching it on YouTube. That every 2 weeks there will be new episode. I think that's something that's a bond, and I think that's branding. Now, I'll mention I have another YouTube channel that I started about 15 years ago, which is a passion of mine, and that's the underwater world. And I post short, curated, narrated, researched videos about cool things I've seen and photographed underwater. I also do that by myself, and it's fun. Your kids can watch it too. But that does not have any schedule. I haven't been able to prioritize that. So whenever I get the time and I can put up an octopus or something cool, and then I do it. So, everything can't get done.
And before we wrap up, I'm always curious too, because everybody has a little bit different approach, especially you're doing it yourself. What is some of the, in terms of producing your podcast and some of the things that you're doing, what is some of the tech stack that you're using, like to host your podcast, maybe edit the audio, that type of stuff? I always like to hear what people are using.
Oh, okay. Well, it's evolved. About 15 years ago, I started with the underwater videos because I love diving. I'm a dive master. That's like my real hobby passion. If I could go diving today, I would. And so I learned iMovie, which came with my new Apple computer.
For
So
sure.
I've since graduated from iMovie to Final Cut Pro. So I use Zoom, which has the benefit, a lot of people don't realize this, Zoom allows you to record separate audio tracks from the person you're interviewing and yourself.
We're
so
doing
that
it right
allows
now,
me
actually. It makes it a lot easier to, you have a studio mix and then you have each of your individual tracks.
Because sometimes, you make a noise or the person's speaking softly and I'm speaking loudly and it doesn't come out nice. So you could fix that, in 30 seconds with 2 tracks. So I use Final Cut Pro. I use Zoom. I use my website is Wix, where and I created my website. I'm the one that they're the host, but I upload everything. And then I use Buzzsprout as my and I found I think it's $12 and change every month. They let me put 3 hours a month of podcast material, which is more than I need. They distribute it to Apple and Spotify and everywhere. And I don't really have to do anything. I just strip the audio out of my Final Cut Pro and post it. Takes about 10 minutes. And I'm very, very satisfied. I don't get any kickback from recommending any of these people, but I would recommend them. I've had no problem with them. And of course, Final Cut is a lot of fun. I probably know about 9% of all of the things it can do. And one of the reasons I use it is because I want to keep learning. Should I have 2 cameras? I mean, you can do all kinds of fancy things with Final Cut. But I would say the technical part is an easy, it's tough at the beginning, but that's the easy part. I think the hard part is finding guests that you're interested in and that the listeners are interested in. And then, I try very hard to let the guests talk, kind of the opposite of what we're doing here. Try and I tell them, I'm going to make you look as good as humanly possible. That's my goal, not to put them on the spot or embarrass them. That, give you an opportunity to promote that book you just slaved over for 3 years. Talk about it. Tell me what you did. I interviewed a guy, for example, who's a researcher who is almost solely responsible for the recommendation now that neonates, newborns in respiratory distress do not get 100% oxygen. 100% oxygen was the obvious solution. That was for many years. Oh, they can't breathe. Let's give them 100%. It turns out it's bad. And somehow, as a young man, he's a pediatrician, he thought, all that oxygen might be bad. There's free radicals. It could be toxic. Everybody thought this guy was crazy. And 30 years into this, he did studies, he did research. He was attacked, for his beliefs. Turns out he was right. And now that's the recommendation. So somebody like that, who's nobody's ever heard of, has saved literally hundreds of thousands of lives all over the world by his work. So he wrote his memoir, I interviewed him. It's on my website. So I love to talk to people like that.
That is very cool. Well, definitely make sure you go check out the Art of Medicine podcast. It's on, as you said, all of your major listening devices. And Dr. Wilner, thank you so much for coming on today. Before we jump off, tell everybody where they can find your book and purchase it, and obviously listen to the podcast and connect with you as well.
Sure. Well, the easiest way is my website, andrewwilner.com. Of course, the book is on Amazon, and I love to hear from people, and I always respond. So send me an email, or you can leave a voicemail if you're interested in locums, or if you think I might be helpful in one of your projects. I'm always interested. And thanks,
Excellent.
Justin, for this opportunity. This was really a lot of fun.
For sure. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us today. And we'll make sure that we have all those links in the show notes. So if you go to the website or go on any of the listening devices, you'll be able to find all of the links to Dr. Wilner's website and everything. And thank you again, Dr. Wilner, for joining us and talking to us about locums and kind of your journey today.
Thank you.